Welcome to Picture the Professor, the sports betting show hosted by a real statistics professor. This is Wednesday, April 16th, 2025, and we've got a few Major League Baseball games to talk about here. So far, again, we're still working on trying to get everything set up here. All of the things I've been mentioning here the last few weeks, we're just getting them going here now. I think maybe going forward, I think I mentioned this too, and last week we ended up driving a car across the country. And we knew that would happen, so we knew we would lose some time there. So still kind of delayed on that, but so far this season, it's been some ups and downs. So far the show plays are slightly in the negative. The top plays are slightly in the positive. But even in a short season and a long season, it doesn't really matter. There's going to be stretches that are really good and really bad in every sport here that we've profited in. And I put here on the screen this 42% bankroll increase was what we did for the bulk of last season here. And it was better than that in college football and NFL as well the last 2 years. It's more like double, or depending on how you played things, maybe even tripled, your bankroll. But even in that, we still had losing weeks, right? And in Major League Baseball last year with that, still pretty good little 40% increase in your bankroll, it's, you don't get that in the stock market, it's so, but even then we still had a month last year where I'm pretty sure we lost money. So, we focus on the big picture here. There's going to be lots of ups and downs. We talk about that a lot. It's just a good reminder as we get into summer here. We're not to the dog days yet where it gets to be quite a grind, but it will be, and there'll be a lot of these ups and downs, but we just got it from the start here. I'm just planting the seeds of we just got to ride the highs and lows here. Again, 3 winning days in a row for all picks. Hopefully we can keep that going. It's a lot more fun with that kind of than the other. We know what'll happen in the long run. Hopefully this is the start of the rest of the good season to come. Some quick reminders here: player-based model, ratings for the current roster. Of course, injuries a huge deal in baseball. At this point, it's all automated, in the system, which is good that I spent the time to code that in, because we're getting to the point it's hard to keep track of it now. I'd forget personally, especially when you get some of the relievers and some of these things. But we've got guys going on and off the IL all the time, and that's very important for this model. Average rating is going to be 100 as you see things on the screen. Higher implies more runs, so pitching wants to be lower. Hitting wants to be higher. We're projecting an average game. One game is unknown. And we can pick any single day in baseball and give an example of nobody saw this coming, right? It's a lot easier for me to say this in baseball. A lot of times, even college basketball, we see that. Football, people have a harder time with that, but it's the same thing. One game, just anything can happen in sports. And so that's what we talk about the long run, right? We say 55% winners. We mean we're going to lose those a bunch, but we're going to win more when we win than we lose when we lose. And that's really what matters at the end of the day. And that's what leads to that principle. Anything's good bet at the right price or number. Last thing before we get going, the honor roll package over on Discord, you're getting cappers, 3 or 4 other cappers that are crossed between player props and soccer and golf and anything you can imagine there. WNBA coming up soon, NBA stuff coming up, a lot of other good, just people in the chat, great conversation, great community over there that I've and I like to be humble about it and say I haven't done much to do it. I've just been fortunate, and I've been really fortunate. It's all you, and I want to give you all people the credit who are over there. But I think part of it is we talk about, we hear all the time having realistic expectations and stuff like that. So I think the people who end up on the Discord, if you're in this channel, you probably have a little bit more realistic expectations maybe than a lot of people. And so people love our Discord because it's not filled with people who are not to say that we aren't winning, right? But we're going to have realistic expectations of how we win. And it's a long, slow process. It's a grind. There's more good days than bad days, but there are bad days, right? We're realistic about it. It's not just all roses and butterflies, stuff like that. So we got a great little Discord chat, summary notes on every single game across a bunch of sports, $29.99 per month. But the link in the show description will get you half off your first month. So don't delay. Our first game here, we've got one afternoon game, and I apologize, this is going to get out to you later, really, than I hoped for a lot of different reasons. So if you're watching this, you might be live betting it, or you may be moving on and just kind of, I'm going to talk real quick about this and then move on to the other ones, and you may just be listening, and hopefully I sound really smart. Again, one game is unknown, so even though this is probably already happening by the time you're watching this, if you're in here in the first hour, if you're one of the first few hundred people, kudos to you. As we discuss here, the Mets and the Twins wrapping up this series here with the afternoon game at 1 p.m. Griffin Canning and David Festa, Matt Festa. I don't know why. Is there a David Festa and a Matt Festa out there? I don't know why I want to think about both these guys' names. But for the Twins, who's a guy that is a younger guy who I've been a little bit higher on. Here, the model is fairly high on him on a per inning basis, and that's important to note. Being a younger guy, he's not a guy who's racked up a lot of major league innings. He's not a guy that they're going to trust necessarily like an ace to go out there and probably go that third time through, especially the fourth, like they might a guy like Pablo Lopez. Who's been doing that. But on a per inning basis, the model really likes him. He had a really good first outing for the season. A lot of good things potentially to come here for David Festa. Right now, the model has him right at league average. Griffin Canning, on the other hand, for the Mets, model's not high on him. He's already made 3 outings on the season, got an average of 5 innings a pop, and it is what it is. A lot of times, especially early on in the season, you're going to hear me start to say, this is a mirage, this isn't real, he's not this good, he's not this bad. And honestly, this one's pretty run-of-the-mill. I mean, 4.20 ERA. Look, it's 15 innings. We're not going to overreact, but I mean, his FIP, XFIP, all the expected stats, all kind of line up with it. His historical projections are actually maybe even a little bit worse. He does stand to benefit a little bit this year pitching in a more pitcher-friendly ballpark, but of course that's not going to help him out here, and it's going to obviously affect his opponents too. So pretty big starting pitcher edge for the Twins, and that's going to carry into the bullpen, as you can see there on the screen. Not to take anything away from the Mets bullpen. A guy like Buto is obviously a great weapon to have who can go multiple innings for the Mets. Diaz has obviously had some ups and downs, but can be one of the most dominant closers in baseball. It's just this Twins bullpen. We've loved them for years now. They've got a ton of depth, a ton of great arms back there. It's like the Guardians. They just keep coming up with them. And so they're going to have a big pitching advantage. Of course, now the Mets are going to have the advantage on offense. They do have the better bats. But I think what I want to call out here is yes, I'm well aware that the Twins have only won 5 games to start, and the Mets have only lost 5. Their records are pretty opposite at this point. But you've heard the comments from Soto, right? If you haven't, he's kind of talked about basically how much he misses hitting behind a guy like, or around a guy like Aaron Judge and what that can do to the lineup and the protection and whatnot. And it's like, he's got pretty good protection in this lineup already. Who wouldn't love to hit around Aaron Judge, obviously, but like you had the opportunity if you wanted that. You're in a good lineup. Like, I don't know what's going on. We're 2 weeks into this thing with Soto, and hearing him say that, and I see what the model here is saying with his offense, and I think that's actually right. I'm not saying Soto's wrong at all. I don't necessarily think he is. Personally, I don't think I would have voiced that because what good's going to come from it. But when you look at what the model's saying about the Mets offense, that lines up number 8 in baseball is a very good offense. But it's not the caliber of the Yankees who, torpedo bats or rocket ship bats or whatever they're going to, they are aside, the bowling pin balls or whatever, right? They still are a really good offense, and they even were before that last year. And so you do have a big drop there. And I think that's kind of maybe what Soto's pointing out. And so that tells me something a little bit more, that he's realizing that this offense isn't quite as invincible maybe as the one he came from last year, that it's not quite as good. And that's, I think, going to be telling going forward, because if that's right, the Mets starting pitching is kind of mediocre at this point. Got a lot of guys injured. And so if their bullpen's just kind of good and the starting pitcher's only mediocre and that offense is just good, they're going to be a good team. They might not be a great team. And that's the difference here. I think going on the road, I know the Twins are still a good team. We're going to take them here. Model says they win this 61% of the time. We locked in Twins minus 115. Model says should go up to minus 154. So this is a pretty strong pick for us. Again, doesn't guarantee the Twins win. It just means that there's a lot of reasons to think this is better than a 50-50 contest. Model says more like 60-40. And so we're going to back the Twins here to start off the afternoon Wednesday, hopefully with the win. And again, all this information for every single game is available to you over on Dub Club in the Honorable Package. Link in your show description will get you half off your first month. Check out those thresholds. We'll tell you exactly what number the model says you should play up to. Of course, you can disagree. You can go higher or lower, but it's just giving you some more things to think about, some more information, some more tools to say, this is a good number. This is maybe not a good number. This is a better number. This is the best number, right, et cetera. And all that information there to try to help you become more successful as a sports bettor. Giants and the Phillies here, 6:45 p.m. Eastern. Robbie Ray and Aaron Nola. This is where I'm going to start talking about mirages. Robbie Ray might be a little bit of one. His grade of a 104 is actually not terrible relative to where he's been at times here on and off the last few seasons. It's been a little bit of in and out with him because of the injuries and maybe some subpar performance, and maybe coming off that Cy Young where there was just a lot of luck there. And of course, pitching in what we were constantly talking about, one of the most friendly pitching ballparks, the most friendly by far in Major League Baseball at this point, with Oakland no more. Um, yes, Ray has pitched uh, 3 times here, 15 innings, 2.93 ERA, but his FIP and XFIP are both in the mid to upper fives. FIP is FIP is an interesting one in that people will talk about it being more of a predictive stat. It's not a predictive stat, it's an explanatory stat. It's a descriptive stat. What that means is it's just telling you what happened. It's not doing any adjustment to try to predict for the future. And I don't want to spend too long with this. Just give me a minute of your time here, viewer, because I think this is a really important to a lot of our sports betting. What that means is if you see a guy who his batting average is 333, well, what does that mean? That's describing that he has gotten hit 1 out of 3 times. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you would predict him to be 1 out of 3 to get a hit in his next at bat, because depending on the situation, you might adjust that. We call that conditional probability based off the information we know. Do we have a really good pitcher on the mound, a really bad pitcher on the mound? That's probably going to change those probabilities, right? And, that's kind of what we're talking about here, I think, with FIP and XFIP, in that FIP is just the explained what happened. XFIP is the we're also going to try to adjust and make it more predictive. And the reason I like to look at both of them is both of them here are telling the same story with Robbie Ray, that it's only been 3 starts, but we're not going to overreact to a good ERA in 3 starts, because the two underlying things that are more descriptive and more predictive are both pointing in the really, really wrong direction. We've still got him below league average. Aaron Nola trending the wrong direction at this point, getting a little bit older, might be towards the end of his career, still a dominant strikeout pitcher. A little bit of a mirage the other direction, in that his ERA, his FIP also are both a little bit higher. His XFIP's lower. That tends to happen with him, in that he can be really susceptible to the home run ball. One of the more extreme pitchers to that in Major League Baseball, especially at that home ballpark. He kind of suffers a little bit like what Verlander did with the Astros, where that's his only flaw, it seems like, for years, where if you took that away, he'd be a 180 ERA, it seems like, every single season. But those, all those solo home runs, or occasionally a 2-run shot or whatever, is eating them up. And that's where the XFIP's a little more predictive, in that it doesn't think he's going to give up quite this home run rate. I think that's true, but he still gives up a lot of home runs. That's the fear anytime you have backing Aaron Nola, is the home run ball. But either way, we've still got him as the much better pitcher. Bullpen's about a wash, both pretty good. Model says the Giants have a little bit more depth, whereas the Phillies are a little bit better at the top end, but both are still extremely good bullpens. Offensively, both right around league average. We're going to go with the Phillies a little bit better, but not much. And you can see that there, a 104 to a 102. This is on an IQ scale, so a standard deviation of 15. Most observations lie within 2 standard deviations of the mean. So most offenses would lie between 70 and 130. That's what you would expect if you've been watching the numbers on the screen. You see our bad offenses, they're usually in the 80s, the low 70s. You might see something slip out of the 70s, the good ones in the 120s, right? Maybe into the 130s. The Yankees here are in the low 130s at this point. The difference between 102 and 104 isn't much. And you can see, though, there are still somehow 5 teams squished between them. They're a bunch of just average offenses. So to recap, bullpen's about average, offense is about average. Nola a little bit worried about the home run ball, but the better starting pitcher. And at home, we've got the Phillies winning this 56% of the time, and saying that the price should be minus 127. Of course, that's right around where the price actually is. And so we're going to pass on the side and instead go to the total market, where the model's projecting only 7. But we lock this in here overnight at 8 minus 123. And so we get the push on 8. Obviously, if you're playing it at 7.5, that's not the end of the world whatsoever, because 8 is not the most common number. It's not one that we want to overly pay a premium for to get any push protection on. It's nice if you can get it. So I'm glad that we've got the 8, officially in our pocket. We sent that out to everybody on Dub Club last night. By the time I'm recording this here now on Wednesday morning, it is 7.5, but the price at minus 105 would be acceptable there. We paid minus 123 for that juice. So you're talking about something that's relatively comparable at that point, and kind of a user preference as to which one you prefer. Would you rather have a little more likelihood of winning, pay a little more juice, or whatever? These are questions we have to ask all the time. So we're going to go under in this one. Again, Nola, a little bit of a concern with the home run ball, but both bullpens being good. The Phillies offense, I don't quite think is necessarily, good enough, top tier enough to really put 10 up on Ray. Not that I think again Ray is a good pitcher, but I just that Phillies offense is just not to me in that level, even into the level of the Cubs or the Dodgers or the Yankees, those top tier offenses. And so because of that, we're going to think we can hang on here under 8 with some juice under 7.5 without it, as the model is only projecting 7. And then one last game here for you, A's and the White Sox. This A's team is not terrible. I said it from the start that I still think they might be the third worst team in the AL, but that's only because once you get past the bottom two, being the Angels and the White Sox, I don't really know who else is that bad. This A's team isn't terrible. They've shown signs of life. They've got a couple decent pitchers. Osvaldo Bido has long been a guy who's been competent. I'm not saying he's good. He's already made 3 appearances, ERA and FIP right around 3. XFIP's a little bit higher, model's a little bit lower on him, but he's always been a guy who can get outs and isn't terrible. And that gives him an edge over a guy like Jonathan Cannon. If you're going to be a team like the A's this year and try to win, enough games, try to not lose 100 games, try to win 70 games or whatever they're going to do. These are the types of games they got to win, where they aren't throwing one of their top guys, but they're throwing someone who can go out there and get outs, and they're facing a guy who maybe can't in Cannon, who in his 3 starts, no matter what you look at, it doesn't project well, one of the weaker starting pitchers in baseball. And of course, you're following that up with the worst bullpen in baseball, according to the model. Not that the A's bullpen is amazing. Mason Miller helps, but otherwise it's not great. The other big difference, though, when we talked about it kind of from the start, this A's offense might actually be decent. We said it from the very start of the season that we had him as a top 10 offense. And I said, we'll see about that. We'll see if the model's right. So far, it's still got him at number 5. That doesn't necessarily mean the model's right. It still could be a little too high on him. But the bottom line is this A's offense through the first, half month of the season doesn't look like it's fake. It looks like it can put up some runs. And again, especially in that ballpark at home where it's going to be a bit of a different story, they're going to give up a bunch of runs too. And that's going to be kind of their downfall. Again, the relievers aren't great, the starters are, but they're going to score runs. They're playing against the White Sox, who are they're terrible at everything at this point. We've got the A's winning this a bunch of times relative to what the market's thinking. We've got it at minus 187. We locked this in here last night at minus 150. You can also play a little bit of a hybrid line if you wanted to play a -1. You'd be looking more in the minus 120, minus 125 range for that. If you wanted to give yourself possibility of better odds, and if the A's win, you at least won't lose any money. You could look at that. I think we're kind of right about the borderline where that would make sense or not. To do a lot of times in this situation, we might look at the total market and see how we think about that. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what to make of this White Sox team. They're kind of so bad at everything. Are they going to be more of a team that tends to lose 10-8 or 3-2, right? I haven't got that feel for them. I'm not sure I want to get that feel for them. There's 30 teams out there. I got a lot of baseball to watch, y'all, and I don't really want to be watching them. So I'm not sure. I know. I think the last game here, one of the games in the series, they did get, it was more like 10-6. And so if you're kind of seeing more of a game like that, play the run line maybe if you want to be more aggressive, or at least play that -1. Again, a lot of times the books that have it at a higher juice price, and so you kind of create it yourself. You'd risk, we're going to say $15 to win 10 on the money line, and then you risk 10 on the run line to win whatever that number is. And now you've made the -1 market, because if they win by exactly 1, you win the 1 bet, the money line, but you lose the other. And so you push. And otherwise you win both or lose both. And so, and then you just scale according to that would be for a $25 wager, because you'd be putting 15 on one and 10 on the other. And if you want to scale higher or lower, you do from there. So that's another option for you on that game. But one of the later games here on a Wednesday, 7:40 Eastern, first pitch. Only 2 games to be had after it. So try to cover you here at the start and the end of the day. And again, we're hopefully this weekend and next, we should be getting all these things up and going, getting all the more record stuff, getting everything up to date here. It's been kind of a pretty crazy little ramp up here this last month or so. And so appreciate everyone hanging in there as we've gotten back into these shows. Hopefully you've been enjoying them. We thank you so much for watching. We wish you the best of luck and remind you that you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.